Tonight we begin with something a little darker, a trade that flourished in the shadows, fueled by science and desperation. We're diving into what life was really like as a Victorian grave robber. Forget the polite society and gaslit streets Hollywood sold you. The truth, you'd probably lose your nerve before you even reach the churchyard. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what we do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now imagine the cold seep of fog through a cheap wool coat, the only sound your own heart hammering against your ribs and the distant mournful whistle of a passing train. The air is thick with the smell of damp earth, decaying leaves, and the faint, cloying sweetness of lye soap from the laundry you just left. Your cover for being out so late. You can almost feel the gritty texture of the soil under your boots, the slickness of the iron shovel in your sweating palms. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft, relentless background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Congratulations, you've just started your shift as a resurrectionist. The good news? The pay is better than a factory hand's. The bad news? So is the risk. A single slip, the crunch of a twig under a watchman's boot, the glint of moonlight on a policeman's button, and you're not just looking at jail, you're looking at a one-way ticket to a penal colony, or worse, the gallows. Your professional name isn't on any ledger. You're a resurrectionist, or more bluntly, a sack-em-up man, because that's what you do. You sack them up. But let's rewind. Why does this job even exist? Why is there a market for what you're about to do? Blame the surgeons. The 1832 Anatomy Act is still a few years away, a lifetime in the politics of corpses. Right now, the only legal sources of bodies for medical schools are executed murderers, and the demand for knowledge, for the slicing and probing that will supposedly usher in a new age of medicine, far, far outstrips the supply provided by the hangman's noose. So the surgeons look the other way. They leave a back door unlocked, a lantern in a specific window, a purse of coin on a certain stool. They don't ask questions. They just ask that the goods be fresh. And so you and your partner, a hulking, silent man named Bill, find yourselves here. On the edge of St. Pancras churchyard, the city a distant murmur of life, the graveyard a silent city of the dead. Your tools are simple, chosen for silence and efficiency, a set of wooden shovels, their blades muffled with strips of cloth, a canvas sack, sturdy and large, a crowbar, its iron wrapped in rags, a dark lantern, its shutter allowing only a sliver of light to escape, and rope, lots of rope. The first part is the worst, the waiting. You crouch in the lee of a large weeping angel, its stone wings offering scant protection from the chill. You watch the watchman's hut. You know his routine. He makes his rounds on the hour, a slow, bored trudge with a lantern that swings like a pendulum counting down the seconds. He's been paid too, of course. A smaller purse, a warning to be conveniently deaf and blind for the next 60 minutes. But you can't trust a man who takes a bribe. So you wait. You count his footsteps. You listen for the creak of his door as he goes back inside, presumably to warm his hands by a meager fire and sip from a flask. The moment the door clicks shut, the clock starts. Bill moves first, a shadow detaching from a deeper shadow. You follow, your heart now a frantic drum in your throat. The target is a new one, buried just this afternoon. You were here, disguised as a mourner, watching the whole affair. A young consumptive, from the looks of the pallbearers. Light load. No family to speak of, just a few hired hands from the workhouse. Perfect. The soil is soft, barely settled. It makes the work faster, but it also feels wrong. More of a violation. You push the thought down. Sentiment doesn't pay the rent. You work fast, a well-practiced team. The wooden shovels bite into the earth with soft, wet thuds. The sound is absorbed by the fog, by the cloth, by the sheer tension in the air. You don't speak. You don't need to. Bill takes the deeper work, his powerful shoulders driving the shovel. You clear the loose soil, keeping the pile neat. The goal isn't to empty the entire grave. That takes too long, makes too much noise. The goal is to reach the head of the coffin, and only the head. The smell hits you first. Not decay, not yet. It's the smell of raw earth, of splintered wood, and something else. Something cold and final. Your shovel strikes wood with a dull, hollow thump. You both freeze, ears straining. Nothing. Just the wind in the yew trees. Bill nods. Now for the most delicate part. You switch to the crowbar. Working by the sliver of light from the dark lantern, you position the tip at the head of the coffin. You need to break it open, but you can't shatter the whole thing. You apply pressure. The wood, cheap and thin, groans, then splinters with a crack that sounds like a gunshot in the silence. You both freeze again, hearts in your mouths. A dog barks in the distance, nothing else. You continue. Using the rope you fashion a noose. Bill reaches into the broken coffin, his face a mask of concentration. This is the part they never show in stories. You don't lift the whole body. It's too cumbersome, too difficult. You slip the rope under the arms of the corpse, a young man pale and still in his shroud. Then with a powerful heave, Bill pulls. There's a sickening, muffled crack as the body is wrenched through the broken coffin lid, the sound of vertebrae separating. It's the signature sound of the Resurrectionist. You're not digging up a person, you're retrieving a commodity. You try not to look at the face. In less than a minute, the body is out, stripped of its burial shroud, which is left behind, that's evidence, and stuffed unceremoniously into the canvas sack. It's a tight, grim fit. You tie the sack shut. The whole operation, from first shovel strike to now, has taken less than 20 minutes. You refill the hole, kicking the soil back in, trying to make the surface look as undisturbed as possible. To a casual glance in the morning, it might just look like settled earth. The grieving family, if they ever return, will be none the wiser. They'll think their loved one is safe, sleeping in the arms of the earth. They have no idea he's already on his way to a marble slab in a dissection room, under the bright, curious eyes of a dozen medical students. You heave the sack onto your shoulder. It's heavier than you expected. It feels dense. The walk back through the sleeping streets is the longest journey you'll ever take. Every flicker of a gas lamp is a watchman's eye. Every rustle in an alley is a policeman's footstep. The sack drips onto the cobblestones, leaving a trail that you pray the morning rain will wash away. Your destination is a nondescript door in a back alley near the hospital. You give the coded knock. The door opens a crack. A hand emerges, takes the sack, pulls it inside. Another hand emerges, drops a heavy leather purse into your palm. The door closes. No words are exchanged. You stand there for a moment in the alley, the weight of the coins a cold comfort in your hand. The smell of the grave is on your clothes, in your hair, under your nails. You can still feel the ghost of that weight on your shoulder. You look down at your hands, soiled and trembling. You are a ghost yourself now, caught between the world of the living and the dead, a necessary monster in the age of progress. And you know, with a certainty that chills you to the bone, that you'll be back here again tomorrow night. The surgeons are always hungry. Continuing on from the churchyard's chilling silence, you now navigate the waking world, a ghost among the living. The weight of the coins in your pocket feels like a counterweight to the soul you just sold. But this isn't a time for philosophy. It's a time for business. The night work is done. The day's work, the business of being invisible, is just beginning. You slip back into your rented room as the sun begins to bleed a dirty orange-grey at the horizon. The key turns with a click that sounds obscenely loud. The room is a closet, a single space holding a narrow bed, a wobbly chair, and a small fireplace that hasn't seen a proper fire in weeks. It smells of old smoke, damp plaster, and the ever-present pungent odour of the tallow candle you snuff out. You don't light another. The first rule after a job is to draw no attention, to be a shadow, and light streaming from a window at this hour is a beacon for curiosity. You shrug off your coat, the one stained with grave dirt, and hang it on a nail behind the door. You'll brush it clean later, over the bare floorboards, scattering the evidence of your labours to the dust mice. Your boots come next, caked with the distinctive, clay-heavy soil of the churchyard. You scrape them with a knife, the mud falling into yesterday's newspaper. Later, you'll toss the whole lot onto the embers of a public fire. Now, you count the coins. The purse feels heavy, but the reality is often less. You spill the contents onto the thin wool blanket of your bed. The coins glint dully in the weak light. Guineas, sometimes sovereigns, it's good money. A factory worker might see this in a month of 14-hour days. You've earned it in one night of heart-stopping terror, but the cut isn't all yours. Bill gets his share. The Watchman got his upfront. There's the cost of the tools, the replacement of ropes and sacks. And then there is the man, the middleman. The one who connects the grubby hands of the Resurrectionists with the clean, scalpel-wielding hands of the surgeons. He takes the fattest cut of all for his discretion. He's the most dangerous man in the whole operation. He knows everyone. If he gets caught, he can name names to save his own neck, your neck. This is the economy of the dead. A brutal, efficient, and deeply cynical supply chain. At the top, the esteemed anatomists, men with letters after their names who lecture in packed gaslit theatres. They never get their hands dirty. They just leave the window open and the money on the stool. Then the middleman, a figure who moves through the underworld and the medical world with equal ease. He's the insulator. Then you and Bill, the machinery, the risk-takers. And at the very bottom, the raw material. The poor, the friendless, the anonymous, their bodies are the currency. The price fluctuates based on scarcity and quality. A fresh adult, top price. A child, less but still valuable. Smaller, easier to transport. A body that's been in the ground a week, a steep discount. The surgeons want their subjects pristine, their tissues clear, not bloated and putrid from decay. Timing is everything. You try to sleep as the city properly wakes up. The sounds are a jarring symphony of life after your night of death. The clatter of milkmaids' pails, the rumble of the first omnibuses, the shouts of costermongers setting up their stalls. You pull the thin blanket over your head, but you can't escape the smell of your own hands. You scrub them with coarse soap and a nail brush, but the scent of the grave, that loamy, metallic scent, seems to have seeped into your pores. It's in your nostrils. It's the taste in your mouth. You dream in shadows and soil, jolting awake at every cart that rumbles too close outside your window. Your day is spent in a kind of purgatorial haze. You can't afford to be seen in the pubs that resurrectionists are known to frequent. That's where the police look first after a spate of robberies. So you walk. You become a flaneur of the overlooked parts of the city. You linger in markets, not to buy, but to blend. You sit on benches in squares, watching the world go by, feeling like an imposter in your own skin. Everyone else has a purpose, a trade. The blacksmith has his hammer, the baker has his oven. You have your shovels and your sack. Your trade is a secret, a thing of shame that paradoxically pays better than their honest sweat. You watch a funeral procession pass by, a wealthy one, by the look of the polished hearse and the plumed horses. A thrill of professional assessment runs through you, cold and detached. Too well guarded, a family vault, not a simple earth plot, too much work. You find yourself automatically cataloguing the mourners. Are they truly grieving, or are they just going through the motions? The truly grieving ones are the worst. They visit the gravesite. They might even pay for a watchman themselves. You learn to read these signs. A fresh bunch of flowers every day? A problem. A simple, slowly weathering headstone? An opportunity. This is the other half of the job, the research. You spend your days scouting. You read the obituary notices in the newspapers, your finger tracing the names of the destitute, those who died in workhouses or charity hospitals. They are the prime targets. You attend funerals of strangers, standing at the back, hat in hand, your face a mask of respectable sorrow. You are noting the depth of the grave, the quality of the soil, the number of attendants, the route of the watchman. You are a strategist planning a military campaign, but your battlefield is the cemetery, and your objective is not to take a hill, but to empty a hole. As dusk falls again, the knot in your stomach begins to tighten. The fear returns, fresh and acidic, every single time. No amount of coin ever makes it go away. You meet Bill in a prearranged spot, a shadowy corner under a railway arch. He nods, his face grim. He's been doing his own research. He has a name, a young woman, consumption, buried this afternoon in a cheap parish yard. The watchman is amenable for a price. The soil is sandy, easy digging. It's a good prospect. You both know the routine. You know the risks. You know the smell, the sound, the weight. The coins in your pocket from last night feel cold. They are already spent. You need more. You always need more. The city above you sleeps, dreams, lives. But you and Bill, you are already descending, back into the dark, back into the quiet, back into the earth. The surgeons are waiting. From the grim daylight calculations of the body-snatching economy, we descend once more into the practical, gritty reality of the night's work. Your mind may calculate in shillings and pounds, but your hands live in a world of soil and splinters. The tools of your trade are not just instruments. They are extensions of your body, each one perfected through gruesome trial and error to be fast, silent, and brutally efficient. In your world, a squeaky hinge isn't an annoyance, it's a potential death sentence. So let's open the kit. This isn't a surgeon's polished mahogany case. Your tools are kept in a stained, ordinary-looking sack, the kind a workman might carry his lunch in. The first and most important item, the shovels. But not just any shovels. You use wooden shovels. Their blades broad and flat, carved from a single piece of tough, resilient elm. Iron shovels are for honest gravediggers. Iron rings out like a bell when it strikes a rock or the coffin lid. Your wooden shovels make only a soft, dense thud, a sound absorbed by the earth and the night. The handles are wrapped in rough cloth, both for a better grip and to further muffle any accidental tap. They are lighter than iron, too, allowing for faster, quieter work. But they break. Oh, how they break. Oh, how they... A hidden root, a stubborn stone, and the blade can snap clean off, leaving you frantically digging with your hands in the pitch dark. Next, the ropes. Good, stout hempen rope, thick as your thumb. You have several lengths. One is your lifeline, literally. It's used to lower yourself into the grave if it's particularly deep. Another, shorter length is the most macabre tool in your arsenal, the drag rope or slip knot. This is what you use to extract the body. You don't lift it out. You lasso it under the arms and haul it out, a single powerful heave that wrenches the corpse through the broken head of the coffin. The sound it makes, a muffled crack and pop of separating bones and ligaments, is one you never ever get used to. It's the sound of your profit margin. Then there's the gimlet or wimble, a simple hand-cranked drill with a large bit. Its purpose is fiendishly clever. Before you even start digging in earnest, you might use it. You find the head of the grave, and you drill a small hole straight down into the soil. Then you lower a weighted line with a hook baited with a piece of rotten meat. If you pull it up and the hook is empty, the coast is clear. If you pull it up and the hook is clean, well, that's bad news. It means the body is in a lead-lined coffin, airtight and utterly useless to you. You pack up and find another mark. It's a waste of time, but it saves you from a night of back-breaking labor for nothing. The crowbar is your key to the goods. Iron, this one, and necessarily so, but it's been meticulously wrapped in layer upon layer of rags and leather, turning it from a clanging metal rod into a dense thumping club. You don't use it to pry open the whole coffin lid. That takes too long and makes too much mess. You use it to break open just the head end of the coffin, creating a hole just large enough to pass the drag rope through and extract the prize. The skill is in the application of force, enough to splinter the wood, but not so much that the crack echoes through the churchyard like a pistol shot. Your lantern is your greatest liability and your most vital asset. It's a dark lantern, a metal box with a single sliding shutter. You can open this shutter just a crack, allowing a sliver of light to escape and illuminate only exactly what you need to see. The edge of the grave, the head of the coffin, your partner's hands. The rest of the world remains in blessed darkness. The fuel is cheap whale oil, and its smell, mixed with the hot metal of the lantern, becomes the scent of your work. You learn to read the shadows it casts, to see the story of the soil and the coffin in that narrow, frantic beam. And finally, the sack, the body bag. It's made of the cheapest, toughest canvas, treated with tar on the seams to make it somewhat waterproof. It's not for dignity, it's for containment and transport. A corpse slung over your shoulder is a dead weight, limbs flopping, leaving a trail of, well, a trail. Stuff it in the sack, tie the end shut, and it becomes a bulky but manageable parcel. You can carry it like a sack of potatoes, which in a cold professional sense is exactly what it is to you now. A commodity, a thing. But the most important tool isn't in the bag, it's in your head. It's the night sense, the ability to move through total darkness without a sound, to distinguish between the scuff of a rat and the footfall of a watchman, to judge the depth of a grave by the feel of the soil on your shovel. To know by the smell, a shift from clean loam to the faint, sickly sweet odor of decay, that you're getting close. To communicate with your partner using only the pressure of a hand on an arm, a series of subtle taps, or the direction of a sharp, hissed breath. You learn the language of the graveyard itself, the difference between the soft, yielding soil of a fresh burial and the hard-packed, settled earth of an old one. How to replace the turf on top so it looks undisturbed, a delicate puzzle of grass and dirt that can mean the difference between a clean getaway and a mob with torches and ropes. This knowledge is more valuable than any tool. It's the difference between being a master of your dark craft and being a corpse on a slab yourself. A neat, full-circle irony that the surgeons would doubtless appreciate. From this silent efficiency of your tools, we now face the living, breathing obstacles designed to stop you. For every innovation in the art of body snatching, there is an equal and opposite reaction from the world of the respectable. It's an arms race, and the battlefield is the graveyard. You are not just fighting the earth and the dead, you are fighting the terrified ingenuity of the living, who will go to astonishing lengths to protect their eternal slumber. The first line of defense is the human one, the Watchman. But he is a variable, you understand, a creature of predictable greed and fear. Some are easily bought. A few shillings, a bottle of gin, and they develop a sudden, profound deafness and a compelling need to study the interior of their hut for precisely 1 hour. But others are righteous, or worse, smart. They don't patrol on a simple, monotonous schedule. They double back. They walk with felt-wrapped boots. They have dogs, not yappy little things, but huge, silent mastiffs that are all teeth and muscle in the dark. A bribed watchman is a convenience. An honest one is a catastrophe. You learn to read them, the way they hold their lantern, the set of their shoulders. The greedy ones slouch. The vigilant ones stand straight, their heads constantly on a swivel. You avoid the latter like the plague. Then there are the physical defenses, the ones that don't sleep and can't be bribed. The first you encounter is the simplest, the mort safe. A name that says it all. It's a crude, heavy iron cage that gets lowered over the fresh grave after the mourners leave. The bars are too close together to pull a body through. It's anchored deep in the soil with chains. Your heart sinks when you see one. It means someone paid extra. It means this body was valued. It means you're not getting it without an industrial saw and a level of noise that would wake the entire parish. You curse, you kick the dirt, and you move on. Time is money, and fighting a mortsafe is a waste of both. For the wealthier, there are the coffin torpedoes. The very sound of it is terrifying. It's a landmine for the dead. A simple, brutal device. A spring-loaded pistol mechanism set inside the coffin, triggered when the lid is broken open. The blast is meant to maim, to kill, or at the very least, to create a sound so unmistakably violent that it brings the entire world running. You've heard stories. A man in Glasgow lost a hand. Another in Edinburgh took a face full of scrap metal and died a week later of infection. You don't know if the stories are true, but the fear is. It makes your hands tremble on the crowbar. Every splinter of wood sounds like the cocking of a hammer. Is this the one? Is this the coffin that fights back? But the most common, and in many ways the most psychologically draining, defense is the deadfall. This isn't a manufactured device, it's a trick of the earth itself. The grieving family, or a hired team of anti-resurrectionists, will partially fill the grave, but leave a large, hollow space just above the coffin, supported by a few weak boards. Then they cover it with a thin layer of soil and turf. It looks like a normal, filled-in grave. But when you step on it, the boards crack, and you plunge down into the hole, often landing directly on the coffin lid, usually with a broken leg for your trouble. It's a dirty, clever trick. You learn to probe the earth with your iron spike before you commit your full weight, feeling for the telltale hollow sensation, the lack of resistance. The churches and cemeteries themselves get in on the act. They build tall, spiked walls. They install heavy, locked gates. They plant thick, thorny bushes around the perimeter. They set up watchtowers. Some even employ their own small private police forces, men who are paid specifically to hunt you. The price of a good fresh body skyrockets. The risks multiply. The easy picks, the paupers in their unmarked pits, are still there. But the demand from the surgeons is for variety, for specific ailments, for teaching specimens. They want the well-fed, the recently diseased, the interesting cases. And those are the ones most fiercely protected. So you adapt, you become a climber, scaling moss-slick walls with rope and grapnel. You become a locksmith, carrying a set of heavy, crude picks for the cemetery gates. You learn the patrol patterns of the private police, their routes more rigid and predictable than the parish watchman. The game evolves. The stakes get higher. The smell of the grave is now mixed with the smell of cold sweat and raw fear. Every shadow is a trap. Every silent grave feels like a taunt. You are no longer just a thief in the night. You are a soldier in a silent war against the dead and those who guard them. A war fought with shovels and crowbars against iron cages and spring-loaded guns. And the only thing you know for certain is that the other side is always thinking of new ways to make you fail. From the physical traps and watchful eyes, we now confront the two most formidable enemies of the Resurrectionist: the cold letter of the law and the chilling whispers of superstition. One can put you in chains, the other can gnaw away your sanity. In the foggy gloom between a gas lamp and a grave, it's sometimes hard to tell which is more dangerous. Let's start with the law, because it's at least something you can understand, even if you despise it. The legal paradox is the very foundation of your trade. Stealing a corpse is not technically a felony. A corpse, in the eyes of the court, is not property. It has no owner. You cannot steal what does not legally belong to anyone. This is the glorious, maddening loophole you dance through every night. If you're caught in the churchyard with a body in your sack, the worst they can usually charge you with is a misdemeanor, trespassing in a burial ground, or the theft of the grave goods, the shroud, the pennies placed on the eyes, the simple wooden coffin you broke. These are property. The body itself is just evidence. This legal fiction is your shield. It's why you always Always leave the shroud behind, but that shield is tissue thin. If you're caught, you won't be treated with legal nuance. The mob doesn't care about precedent. The police, feeling the public's furious heat, will find something to stick you with. And there is one enormous glaring caveat to your legal immunity, the act of dissection. The moment you sell that body to a surgeon who then mutilates it, you are an accessory to a felony. The crime isn't the theft. It's the dissection of a body against the peace and dignity of the crown. It's a piece of legal gymnastics that would make a circus acrobat weep. You stole nothing, but you enabled the real crime. It's enough to send you to the gallows, or at the very least on a one-way trip to a penal colony in Van Diemen's Land, a sun-scorched hell on the other side of the world, where you'll likely die of disease or violence, your own body left to rot in an unmarked grave. The irony is so thick you could taste it, if you could taste anything over the grave dirt in your mouth. And then there are the things the law doesn't cover, the superstitions, the ghosts. You tell yourself you don't believe. You're a practical man, a man of commerce. But out here in the deep dark with the wind sighing through the yew trees like a dying breath, it's hard to stay practical. The stories the other resurrectionists tell in hushed tones in the worst taverns, they get to you. The tale of Jemmy Bones, who swore a corpse sat up and grabbed his wrist as he was roping it, its dead eyes wide open and accusing. Jemmy was never right again, they say. He jumped off London Bridge a month later. You've seen things yourself. Shadows that move just wrong. A feeling of being watched from an empty corner of the churchyard, the cold spot in a grave that has no reason to be colder than the earth around it. Is it your guilt manifesting? Is it the fog playing tricks? Or is it something else? Something that lingers when the soul has departed, a residual anger at the violation of its temple. You make the sign of the cross with a dirty hand, a superstitious gesture from a childhood you barely remember. It can't hurt. Some of the lads carry charms, a rabbit's foot, a specific stone, a verse from the Bible scrawled on a piece of paper and stuffed in a pocket. Protection. You scoff at them, but you notice you've started touching the worn piece of jet in your own pocket, a gift from a woman you once knew, before you break open a coffin. Just a habit, a comforting weight. The worst is the fear of contagion. This isn't superstition, this is grim medical fact. You are handling the recently deceased. People who died of fevers, of consumption, of plagues that the doctors have no name for. A cut on your hand, a splash of bodily fluid in your eye, and you could be joining your commodity on the slab in a week's time. You've heard the surgeons talk of cadaveric poison. You don't know what it is. But you know men who have gotten sick after a job, their skin turning grey, their bodies racked with fever, until they too are just a memory. You try to wash thoroughly afterwards, but the fear is always there, a low-grade infection in your mind. So you live in this limbo. The law is a twisted net that could snare you on a technicality at any moment. The supernatural is a creeping dread that haunts your every shadow. And your own body is a potential traitor, waiting to succumb to the very diseases you loot from the dead. You are an outlaw, a monster in the making, and a potential patient, all rolled into one. The coins in your purse feel heavier with this knowledge. They are weighed down with fear, with guilt, with the unshakable sense that you are selling more than just bodies. You are selling pieces of your own soul, and one night, the debt will come due. From the spectral fears of the churchyard and the cold logic of the law, we arrive at the final brutal destination, the reason this whole grim economy exists. You've delivered the goods. Now you get to see what they're used for. This is where the night's work meets the morning's science, where your shadowy trade is illuminated under the blazing gaslights of the anatomical theatre. The body you wrested from the earth is about to be taken apart in the air. You don't go to the main entrance, of course not. You slip down a narrow, reeking alley that runs behind the Grand Medical School, the fine brickwork giving way to cracked plaster and overflowing gutters. The air changes here. It's a thick, complex cocktail of smells that sears your nostrils. The sharp, clean sting of chemical preservatives fighting a losing battle against the sweet, cloying rot of decay overlain with the greasy scent of burning coal from the building's furnaces. This is the smell of progress. It's the smell of money. The door is unmarked, heavy oak reinforced with iron bands. You give the knock 2 quick raps, a pause, then a third. A small, grated slot slides open. A pair of eyes, pale and utterly devoid of emotion, assesses you. The slot closes. You hear the heavy thunk of bolts being drawn back. The door swings inward just enough for you to slide through into a stone-flagged passageway that leads down. Always down. This is the receiving room. It's a cold, sterile space, a world away from the muddy chaos of the graveyard. The walls are lined with slate-top tables, grooved and channeled to drain fluids into buckets placed underneath. The air is frigid, kept that way to slow decomposition. Other sacks lie on the floor, some still twitching faintly with the last of the rigor mortis. Attendants in blood-stained leather aprons move with a quiet, dispassionate efficiency. One of them approaches you, his expression bored. He doesn't look at your face. He looks at the sack. He unties it, peers inside, prods the contents with a finger. He's checking for freshness, for cause of death, for any interesting pathologies. A young adult, male, no obvious signs of disease, standard fare. He grunts, a sound of mild approval. He gestures to a clerk sitting at a high desk in the corner who makes a note in a large ledger. The clerk doesn't look up either. You are a delivery service. You are the invisible first link in the chain. Then, the money. The clerk counts out the coins, his fingers moving with practiced speed. He slides the pile across the desk to you. No purse this time. Just cold, hard cash on a cold, hard surface. The transaction is complete. There are no receipts. No thanks. You are already being forgotten. But sometimes, if you're early and the anatomist is in a good mood, you're allowed a glimpse. You're shepherded up a narrow, winding staircase that emerges into a dark gallery high above the main theatre. And the sight that greets you is breathtaking. It's a vast, circular room, like a cruel parody of a church. Raked seating rises steeply on all sides, a vertiginous bowl of eager, young male faces. In the center, directly below you, is the focal point, the marble dissection table brilliantly lit by a constellation of gas jets. On the table lies a body. Not a person anymore, a subject, a cadaver. It's been washed, the grave dirt scrubbed away, but it's pale, waxy, inhuman. The esteemed anatomist, a man in a formal black coat, stands beside it. He is not a ghoul. He is a performer. His voice is calm, clear, and carries easily to the highest seats. He holds a scalpel. It winks in the light. He makes the first incision. There is a collective, sharp intake of breath from the students, a sound of awe and horror. You can't hear it from your perch, but you can see the flash of steel, the partage of skin and fat, the revelation of the deep red mystery beneath. The anatomist works with a detached, artistic precision. He names the parts as he goes: pectoralis major, sternum, pericardium. The words are meaningless to you, but they are magic to the students, who scribble furiously in their notebooks. This is what they paid for. This is the knowledge your risk purchased. The body is not a person here. It is a map, a textbook, a complex machine to be understood. One ligament, one artery, one organ at a time. The heart is lifted out, held aloft for all to see. The lungs are inspected. The brain, that final grey secret, is carefully extracted from the skull. There is no malice in it. There is only a hungry, relentless curiosity. It is somehow more dehumanizing than anything you did in the graveyard. You turned a person into a thing. They are turning the thing into a diagram. You slip away before the end, back down the stairs, through the cold room, out into the alley. The morning sun feels obscenely bright, the sounds of the city absurdly loud. The coin in your pocket is warm from your grip. You can still see the flash of the scalpel, the pale, opened flesh on the marble slab. You delivered the raw material. They turned it into a lesson. You both have your parts to play in this new, enlightened age. And as you walk away, the smell of the chemicals and the rot still clinging to your clothes, you understand one thing with perfect, chilling clarity. In this city, nobody is truly safe, not even in death. The seekers of knowledge will always find a way. And you are the way. From the clinical glare of the dissection theatre, we descend once more into the personal abyss. The money is spent, the fear is a constant companion, and the night's work is etching itself into your very bones. A career as a resurrectionist isn't a career. It's a slow suicide paid for in installments of coin and pieces of your soul. No one dies old in this trade. They die young, broken, or simply vanish into the city's hungry shadows. The physical toll is the first and most obvious collector. Your hands are a roadmap of your work. They are permanently stained with earth, the grime ground deep into the cracks and creases of your skin, a patina no amount of scrubbing can remove. The nails are broken, blackened, the fingertips calloused and numb from the constant friction of rope and shovel handle. Your back is a constellation of aches, a permanent crick from hours bent double in a cramped grave, heaving dead weight. You develop a cough, a deep, rattling thing that starts in your chest and tastes of fog and soil. Is it the damp? Is it the cadaveric poison the surgeons whisper about? Or is it just your body's way of telling you it's had enough? You wash it down with gin. Cheap, burning gin that numbs the pain and blurs the memories for a few precious hours. But the body can be ignored. The mind is a trickier beast. The paranoia sets in. A low-grade fever in your thoughts. You see Watchmen in every passing constable. You see accusing eyes in every stranger's glance. A casual question from your landlord. Out late again, I see. Sends a jolt of pure terror through you. Is he just making conversation, or is he digging? You start avoiding your few remaining friends. Their normal lives, their simple concerns about the price of bread or a new play at the theatre, feel like a foreign language. How can they worry about such trivial things when you've just hauled a dead girl through a broken coffin lid? The gap between their world and yours becomes a chasm you can no longer cross. Sleep becomes a battleground. When you do manage to drift off, the dreams come. Not dreams, visitations. You're back in the grave, but the soil is alive, clutching at you, pulling you down. The corpse opens its eyes, not with accusation, but with a weary sadness that is somehow worse. You wake up gasping, your heart hammering, the sheets soaked with a cold sweat that smells, you swear, of turned earth. You reach for the gin bottle again. It's the only thing that guarantees a few hours of black, dreamless oblivion. You look at your partner, Bill. The silent, hulking man is starting to fray at the edges. His hands have a faint tremor now. He drinks more, and when he drinks, he talks. Morbid, rambling stories about the ones that fought back, about spirits that followed him home. You tell him to shut up, that it's the drink talking, but you see the same fear in his eyes that you feel in your own gut. This life is sandpaper on the nerves, grinding you both down to raw, exposed endings. Then the close calls start. The night the watchman's dog gets loose and you have to hide for an hour, pressed against the freezing mud at the bottom of an empty grave, the beast's hot breath and low growls just feet above you. The time you misjudge a coffin and your crowbar slips, gouging a deep furrow in your own leg. You bind it with a strip torn from your shirt, the blood soaking through the rag, a bright, shocking red against the universal black and brown of your existence. Every near miss steals a little more of your nerve. Each time, it gets harder to force your feet to walk towards the churchyard gate. And you know with a certainty that is colder than the grave itself how this ends. There are only a few exits. 1. You get caught. The mob, the courtroom, the gallows, or the transport ship. 2. You get sick. The cough worsens, you develop a fever, and you join the countless other anonymous poor in a potter's field. A delicious irony that would doubtless amuse the next generation of resurrectionists who dig you up. 3. You vanish. You take your last purse of coins and you try to run, to become someone else in another city. But the smell of the earth follows you. The ghosts follow you. You can't outrun your own hands. There is a fourth way, of course. The one nobody talks about but everyone considers in their darkest moments. The river, the rope, the quick, final end on your own terms. It starts to look less like a tragedy and more like a mercy. A clean exit from the dirt and the dread. The Anatomy Act of 1832 looms on the horizon like a grim savior. It won't be born from morality, but from pragmatism. It will legalize the dissection of unclaimed paupers from workhouses and hospitals, cutting you, the middleman, out of the equation. Your terrible, necessary trade will be rendered obsolete by bureaucracy. The demand for your services will dry up. The fear will remain. The memories will remain. The stain on your soul is permanent. You've served your purpose for science and progress, and like a used scalpel, you will be discarded. You are a ghost already, waiting for the rest of the world to notice you've died. The shadow you cast is long, and it is falling over you. From the personal decay and looming endpoints, we now witness the systemic collapse. The rumors have been circulating for months, whispered in taverns and dismissed as impossible. A government act, legislation, the one thing your shadowy world cannot fight. The Anatomy Act of 1832 isn't just a new law. It's an executioner's axe swinging toward your neck. And it's forged in the very hypocrisy that created you. The news finally comes not as a shout, but as a quiet, devastating certainty. You hear it from the middleman. His face is grim. There's no work. There will be no more work. The act has received royal assent. The legal loophole you danced through hasn't been closed. It's been made irrelevant. The government has now officially sanctioned what you did in the shadows. The surgeons will get their bodies, but they'll come from the workhouses and the charity hospitals now. The unclaimed poor, the very people who were your bread and butter, will be delivered to the dissection tables by clerks and paperwork, not by you and your sack. The price of a corpse plummets overnight. The unique, terrifying skills you've honed, the silent shovels, the dark lantern work, the nerve to face the dead and the law, are now worthless. You have been made obsolete by bureaucracy. The impact is immediate and brutal. The network collapses. The watchmen who took your bribes now find their extra income vanished. The middleman, that dangerous figure who connected two worlds, simply disappears, probably to reinvent himself as a respectable supplier under the new system. Your partner Bill takes the news with a strange, blank silence. He just nods, finishes his gin, and walks out of the tavern. You never see him again. Some say he threw himself in the Thames. Others that he signed onto a merchant ship bound for somewhere, anywhere else. You don't know. In this new world, nobody knows anything anymore. You are now a ghost in a world that no longer has a place for you. You walk past the medical school, but the back door is locked to you. The coded knock is useless. The cold, clinical receiving room is now staffed by men in slightly better aprons, handling paperwork instead of grappling with the moral ambiguity of your trade. The bodies arrive on official carts, with permits. It's all so clean, so bloodless, so legal. The stench of decay is the same, but it's now sanitized by the seal of the state. The irony is a physical pain in your gut. You were the monster they needed to make this clean, new system possible. You were the sin that allowed for their virtue. Some of the lads try to adapt. A few of the more entrepreneurial or desperate resurrectionists become porters, for the new anatomy schools, using their knowledge of handling corpses for a paltry, regular wage. They become the very functionaries who now unload the carts of the legally condemned dead. They trade the thrill and terror of the night for the grim security of a weekly paycheck. It's a living death, a final, complete surrender. Others, those with violence already coiled in their hearts, turn to outright robbery. Why sneak around graves when you can just hold a knife to a man's throat in a dark alley? The skills of stealth and fearlessness are transferable after all. The city gains a new wave of common criminals, born from the ashes of a specialized trade. But you can't do it. You're too known. Your face, your hands, your very posture marks you as what you were. The police, who previously had to play a complex game with you, now look at you with open contempt. You are a relic, a bad memory. You are a problem they can now solve with a truncheon and a charge of vagrancy. The few coins you saved dwindle at an alarming rate. The rent goes unpaid. The gin becomes a necessity, not a luxury. You find yourself drawn back to the churchyards at night, not to work, but just to be there. It's the only place that makes sense anymore. The familiar fear is a comfort. The smell of the earth is like a homecoming. You stand at the gate of St. Pancras looking in. The Watchman is new, a young, vigilant man who doesn't know you and who eyes you with immediate suspicion. The mortsafes still stand over the graves of the wealthy, rusting now, their purpose mostly forgotten. The Deadfalls have collapsed in on themselves. The arms race is over. You lost. The last resurrection isn't of a body from the earth, it's the resurrection of your own past, which now haunts you with a clarity that daylight never allowed. Every face in every sack, every splintering coffin lid, every coin counted in a cold room, it all plays behind your eyes, a relentless, silent panorama of your damnation. You thought you were selling bodies. You were selling yourself. And now the market has closed, and you are left with the worthless currency of your own corrupted soul. The world has moved on, legislated you into a historical footnote. You are a story to scare children with, a nasty secret in the clean narrative of medical progress. You stand there at the cemetery gate, a living ghost in a city of the living, and you understand the final terrible truth. For a resurrectionist, there is no life after death. There is only the long, slow wait to become the very thing you once sold. From the institutional collapse and personal obsolescence, we now witness the final, inevitable unraveling. The Anatomy Act didn't just take your livelihood, it took your purpose, your identity, the very reason your heart beats in this dirty, forgotten body. Now you are simply a man with grave dirt permanently under his nails, wandering a city that has officially forgotten you need to exist. The descent is not dramatic. It is a slow, granular decay, like soil trickling through fingers. Your savings are gone within months. The landlord, tired of promises, throws your meager possessions into the street, the stained coat, the few tools you couldn't bear to sell. They land in a puddle. You leave them there. What use are silent shovels in a world that legislated silence? You become a creature of the streets, sleeping in doorways when you can, under bridges when you can't. The cold you once fought in churchyards now seeps into your bones from the very cobblestones you walk. It's a deeper, more hopeless cold. At least in the grave you were working. Here you are just waiting. You try to find work, honest work. But your hands, trained for one specific terrible task, are useless for anything else. You apply at a factory. The foreman takes one look at your hands, your face, the way you flinch from bright light, and he shakes his head. You're not stable, he says. You smell, he says, and it's true. The smell of the grave has metabolized in you. It's in your sweat, your breath, your pores. It's the scent of a profession the world has deemed monstrous. You are a walking ghost, and everyone can smell the cemetery on you. The gin is your only constant companion. It's cheaper than food, and it does a better job of quieting the memories. You drink until the world softens at the edges. until the faces of the dead blur into one another, until the sound of your own heartbeat doesn't sound like a watchman's footsteps. You drink until you can almost forget the sound a coffin makes when it cracks open, almost. The memories are no longer just in your dreams. They stalk you in daylight. A certain slant of light through the smog, the particular way a woman arranges flowers on a market stall, the smell of fresh-turned earth in a park garden, any of these can trigger a flash so vivid it steals your breath. You are permanently, violently homesick for a place of terror. You see Bill once, or a ghost of him. He's slumped in an alley, a hollowed-out version of the powerful man you once worked beside. His hands shake uncontrollably. He doesn't recognize you. His eyes are empty windows looking out on a hell only the two of you could ever understand. You drop a coin in his lap and hurry away, your own heart hammering with a fear sharper than any you felt in a graveyard. That is your future. That is the end of the line. The city itself becomes a hostile anatomy. You don't see streets and buildings anymore, you see a body. The alleyways are like veins, dark and circulatory. The grand buildings are like bones, the scaffolding like exposed ribs. The people are a tide of blood flowing around you, an obstruction. You are a foreign object, a piece of grave grit in the city's living tissue, and you feel it trying to expel you. The constant noise of London, the carts, the shouts, the machinery, is a relentless dissection of your sanity. You find yourself at the river, the Thames. It's where everything ends up eventually. The sewage, the waste, the unwanted. It feels like coming home. You stare into the dark, sluggish water. It smells of decay and industry, a familiar combination. This is the final dissection table, the one that requires no permit, no paperwork. It takes everything and asks no questions. It is the ultimate democratic grave. Your hand goes to your pocket out of habit. The piece of jet is still there, the smooth, cold stone, your only remaining tether to a life before the shovels, before the sacks, before the smell. You clutch it until your knuckles are white. This is it. The final calculation, the last bit of risk assessment. The cost of continuing versus the cost of ending. The ledger is brutally simple. You have nothing left to sell but your own body, and the market for that particular commodity has, rather inconveniently, just been nationalized. You don't jump. Not tonight. The habit of survival, beaten into you over countless terrifying nights, is too strong. You turn away from the water and stumble back into the maze of streets. But you know, with a certainty that is almost peaceful, that you will be back. The river isn't going anywhere. It will wait for you. It has all the time in the world. And so, for now, you simply disappear back into the city's grimy, indifferent embrace. One more unclaimed soul in a system now designed to process them. You are a relic, a ghost, a footnote, and your only remaining purpose is to haunt the world that created and then destroyed you. From the personal dissolution and river's edge, we now pull back, through time, through memory, through the accumulating layers of dust and judgment. Your individual story ends in obscurity, but the story of what you were, what you represented, continues to echo. The grave robber vanishes, but the ghost of their trade lingers in the foundations of modern medicine, in our laws, and in our deepest cultural fears about death and violation. Let's step into a different kind of quiet. Not the tense hush of a churchyard, but the sterile silence of a museum, a century and a half removed. The air is climate-controlled, smelling of polished wood and faint lemon cleaner. Under glass, in a discreet corner of a medical history exhibit, your tools are laid out with academic precision. The wooden shovel, now clean and dark with age, bears a small card, C. 1820, believed used in body snatching. The dark lantern sits beside it, its shutter permanently open, harmless. The ropes are coiled neatly. They look like artifacts, which they are, but they don't smell of sweat and fear and soil anymore. They just smell of time. People file past them, School children on a field trip barely glancing, a couple of tourists taking a photo without really seeing. An elderly man pauses, peering through his glasses. Does he see the stains? Can he imagine the weight of them in his hands, the grit of the wood, the desperate necessity? Probably not. They are relics of a barbaric past, safely contained behind glass. A past we have comfortably outgrown, or so we tell ourselves. Because the legacy of the Resurrectionist is not just in these tools, it's in the very structure of modern healthcare. The Anatomy Act of 1832, the law that destroyed you, didn't end the need for cadavers. It just bureaucratized it. It created a system where the poor and the marginalized continued to supply the raw material for medical progress, but now through the cold, impersonal machinery of the state. The fear of the pauper's grave, of the workhouse end and the subsequent dissection became a potent terror for the Victorian poor. Your illegal midnight trade was replaced by legal daylight paperwork. The result was the same. Medical students learned their craft. Surgeries advanced. Lives were saved. The foundation for modern surgery was laid on those same marble slabs, whether the body arrived via your sack or a government cart. The moral questions you embodied have never been resolved. They've just been refined. The debate over body autonomy, over who controls what happens to our physical shells after death, rages on in different forms. Organ donation controversies, the use of executed prisoners' bodies in countries like China, the scandal of Alder Hey, where children's organs were retained without consent. The ghost of the Resurrectionist haunts every ethics committee meeting in every modern hospital. The essential, uncomfortable bargain remains. For some to live, to learn, to heal. Others must surrender their flesh. The question is no longer whether this happens, but how we manage it, how we sanitize it, how we make it palatable. And what of you, the individual lost to history? There are no plaques for resurrectionists, no graves marked with their names. The ultimate, fitting irony. If you died in the workhouse, your own body likely ended up on the slab, completing the circle with devastating perfection. If you died on the streets, you were buried in a pauper's pit, anonymous and unmourned. Your legacy is the medical knowledge you enabled and the cultural shadow you cast. That shadow is long. It falls across every ghost story set in a graveyard, every tale of vengeful spirits rising from disturbed earth. It's in our language, to be gravely ill, a shallow grave, a resurrection. You became a monster in the public imagination because you represented the ultimate violation of the social contract, the promise of peaceful rest. You forced a society obsessed with the trappings of death, the black crepe, the elaborate mourning rituals, the sturdy coffins, to confront the ugly physical reality that lay beneath all that ceremony. The body is just meat, and meat has value. So here we are, in a clean, well-lit museum, looking at your cleaned-up tools. We have advanced, we have laws, we have ethics, we have consent forms. The back alley door of the medical school has been replaced by a brightly lit donor registry office. But the fundamental grisly transaction at the heart of anatomy remains. The resurrectionists are gone. But the need they met, the relentless, hungry need of science to see inside, to understand, to cut and probe and learn, that need is eternal. You were a symptom of that need. A brutal, necessary monster in an age of burgeoning reason. And as we turn away from the glass case, back to our safe, sanitized world, a small, uncomfortable thought nags. In their place, with their choices, with their world. Would we have been any different? The dust of history settles over your memory, but the question you embody remains restless, refusing to stay buried.